Okay, so you're trying to keep up, right? You want to get the deep knowledge from different places, see how it all connects, but, without drowning in information. That's what we try to do here.
Exactly. And today we're jumping into Pietro Ubaldi's current problems.
Yep.
It's quite a journey. We're aiming to pull out the really useful stuff, the insights that still feel relevant today about, well, everything: morality, society, economics, even health and spirituality.
Right. And Ubaldi had this specific goal, didn't he? To rationally show why doing good works out and doing evil, well, doesn't. It gives him this unique lens to look at all these different parts of life.
It definitely. He weaves it all together: how we treat each other, how society works, money, our bodies, our spiritual side. It's all interconnected in his view. So
Oh.
yeah, the mission is to find those aha moments, the surprising links he makes.
Okay, let's get into it. First up, morality. That's always a big one.
So Ubaldi's core idea here, it kind of boils down to this.
Hmm.
The strongest reason for us to be good isn't just some lofty ideal. It's actually understanding, rationally, that it's in our own best interest.
And that doing bad stuff ultimately hurts us.
Precisely. It leads to personal disadvantage down the line.
Yeah.
He's pretty skeptical about just appealing to ideals.
Yeah, he suggests that those noble appeals can sometimes be, well, hijacked by people just looking out for themselves, right?
Exactly. It's a bit cynical, maybe, but he's a realist. He talks about this really interesting idea of an imponderable police.
Imponderable police. What's that? Like cosmic cops.
Huh, sort of. It's not literal, but more like a natural law. If you break it, there are consequences. Real ones, whether you believe in the law or not. The universe sort of keeps score,
Okay, I get that. Like gravity, you don't have to believe in it to fall down.
Right. And he also emphasizes that we can't just like flip a switch and become perfectly moral overnight. We're still pretty animalistic in some ways.
So morality has to be introduced gradually.
Yeah, in doses we can actually handle given our current biology.
Yeah.
He warns against trying to build these perfect utopias that ignore, well, human nature.
Trying to force it can backfire.
It really can. He even says trying to impose, say, spiritual laws onto a biological reality that isn't ready for them, that can cause problems. You have to respect the laws of each level of existence.
That's fascinating. So pushing too hard for spiritual growth before you're grounded could actually be dangerous?
Potentially perilous, yeah. Ungrounded leaps aren't the way, according to him. It's about steady progress within the existing reality.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Social dynamics. He brings up Machiavelli, that famous line, everyone sees what you appear to be, few feel what you are. How does Ubaldi respond to that?
Well, he agrees people often judge by appearances, absolutely. But he adds a twist. He says that whole system of using appearances, exploiting superficiality, it actually drives a kind of selection process.
How so?
It favors cleverness, astuteness. Over time, people get wise to the game. They become less easily fooled. So the effectiveness of just appearing a certain way starts to decrease as, well, imbecility decreases, as he puts it.
Huh. Okay, so the tricks get old. What about Machiavelli's other big idea that for the state, the ends justify the means? Anything goes to preserve power.
Ubaldi sees that as really revealing, actually. It shows how thin our ethical layer is over our more basic biological nature. When things get tough, those proclaimed principles often just disappear.
And it's not just rulers, is it? Ubaldi says that urge to dominate, it's kind of everywhere.
Oh, yeah. He points it out in people who seem subordinate to workers, officials, even clergy or doctors.
Yeah.
Anyone with a little bit of authority can be tempted to misuse it for their own benefit.
But he doesn't just blame individuals for society's problems.
No, and that's key. He tends to attribute it more to our current overall level of evolution as a species. It's like a shared current, a collective tendency, rather than just pointing fingers at bad actors.
So it's systemic in a way, less about scapegoats, more about understanding the state we're at. He also talks about power and wealth being potentially good, but often corrupted by the involuted. What does he mean by involuted?
Involuted. Think of it as people who are more driven by their ego, their base desires, less connected to a bigger picture or higher purpose. Ubaldi argues that when power and wealth end up mostly with these types, they tend to get misused, selfishly.
Which leads to distrust between rulers and ruled.
Exactly. People have seen the Machiavellian playbook so many times, he says, that it's becoming transparent. The bad faith is almost expected, and the tactics are losing their punch.
Because life itself exposes hypocrisy.
That's his view. Life is mercilessly sincere, he says. It eventually strips away the pretense and shows true values.
Then he brings in this figure, the man of the gospel, someone detached from worldly stuff, focused on a higher reality. How does that fit in?
Well, from the perspective of someone chasing power or wealth, this man of the gospel looks like they're losing, right? They're being exploited, maybe.
But Ubaldi says they're actually gaining something more valuable.
Precisely. They value spiritual growth over material things. So the exploiter, focused only on the material, is the one who's truly missing out on the bigger picture, the higher value.
He also makes this distinction between internal sanctity, known only to, say, God, and external sanctity, what the world declares. They don't always match up.
Right. True holiness, for Ubaldi, is a private matter and internal state. It's not about public perception.
Which ties back to motivation. And this leads him to rethink virtue itself, doesn't it? Not just not doing bad, but actively doing good.
Yes. He shifts it from negative virtue, just avoiding harm, to positive virtue, which he defines as intelligent action that actually fosters life, that elevates things based on understanding how the universe works.
So virtue is proactive. It's about making things better, intelligently.
Exactly. Not just refraining, but actively contributing to well-being.
Okay, economics.
No,
This should be interesting. He doesn't see supply and demand as some nice, balanced equation.
not at all. He views it as another version of the struggle for the selection of the strongest, just, playing out economically. Looks peaceful on the surface.
But underneath, it's just unleashed egoism.
That's his take. Offer and demand become sort of veiled forms of aggression in the civilized context. Each side wants the maximum gain for the minimum effort or cost.
So economic justice just means whoever has more power wins, like in war or politics.
Pretty much, yeah. The strongest dictates the terms. He even argues that sometimes supply actively creates demand. Maybe not always for the best reasons.
He gives examples in medicine and religion, suggesting self-interest might push things that aren't really needed.
He does. It's a provocative idea that the desire to sell something, whether it's a drug or a doctrine, can sometimes overshadow its actual collective utility.
And he points out this paradox. In a system based on pure greed, making more stuff doesn't always make things better. It can lead to devaluation, crises.
Even destroying goods while people are in need. It shows the inherent contradictions when individual egoism is the main driver.
But he sees a weird upside to economic downturns, something about preventing the involuted from getting too powerful.
Yeah, it's a stark view. But he suggests these leveling towards misery periods act as a sort of natural check, preventing those driven purely by self-interest from accumulating too much economic clout, which they'd likely misuse.
He also traces the evolution of money from gold to coins to paper becoming more abstract, more easily manipulated.
Right. And that move away from tangible value, he thinks, makes the whole system more unstable and vulnerable to political interference.
And he's not keen on state intervention in the economy.
Generally not. He sees it as disrupting the natural equilibrium of supply and demand, creating artificial conditions, inflation, and ultimately more crises. It's often a temporary patch that worsens the underlying issue.
So for him, what makes good currency?
Trust and stable real value, that's the essential quality. He contrasts that with the instability we often see, this weird disconnect.
Where warehouses can be full, but people have no money, or vice versa.
Exactly. That antagonistic relationship between goods and money. And the root cause, he keeps saying, is human psychology, this individualistic egoism driving the constant battle.
He even mentions panic amplifying things. Producers afraid prices will fall, consumers afraid they'll rise.
Yeah, fear just throws fuel on the fire, making the imbalances worse.
And in this setup, the honest person often loses out.
That's his observation. The system can inadvertently reward those who disregard the collective interest and just focus on accumulating wealth for themselves.
While labor, the foundation, gets squeezed by all these fluctuations.
Constantly. Workers are vulnerable to unemployment when demand drops or hardship when costs rise, caught between the shifting values of goods and money.
And again, government fixes are usually temporary band-aids.
In his view, yes. They don't address the core conflict between individual and collective interest.
So what's his solution? How do you fix that conflict?
He believes the only real way is to make individual and collective interests coincide, to create a system where acting selfishly also benefits the group, based on a clear, utilitarian understanding.
And he has a specific mechanism in mind, something about linking money supply to basic goods.
Yes, a system of monetary circulation designed to automatically stabilize prices. The amount of money would be directly tied to the availability of essential, monetizable goods.
How would that work? Monetization and demonetization.
Right. When basic goods are abundant, you issue more money, essentially titles, backed by those stored goods. This lowers interest rates, encourages investment. When goods become scarce, you sell off the stored goods to redeem those titles, taking money out of circulation.
Which would raise interest rates and encourage saving.
Exactly. The goal is an automatic balancing act, linking money directly to real-world supply, keeping prices stable, and incentivizing production or saving as needed. It's quite ingenious, really.
Okay, wow. Let's shift again to health, and specifically cancer. He starts again by saying we need a bigger view, a cosmic perspective.
Yeah, he insists you can't understand something like cancer in isolation. You have to embed it within the general functioning of the universe. Everything's connected.
Including our spiritual condition influencing our physical health.
Absolutely. He sees them as inseparable. A purely materialistic science, he argues, misses the deeper meaning of disease because it ignores this connection.
So true health is about harmony between the physical, spiritual us and the laws of life.
That's it. Harmony. He cites Alex Carroll, emphasizing that psychic events have physical consequences and vice versa. Mind and body are one system.
And life itself is this spiritual principle. Suffering comes from going against the natural order.
Yes, life animates everything, and everything has its own law. Deviate from that order, and you get disharmony, suffering.
He's critical of what he calls a spiritually anarchic psychology, stemming from the scientific idea of the struggle for life.
Right. He thinks that struggle mentality leads medicine down a path of constantly fighting the body, using repressive therapies instead of supporting its natural healing processes.
Including the microbist fallacy, over-focusing on germs.
Exactly. He sees that as part of the same old struggle mindset. He controversially suggests microbes are often an effective disease, not the primary cause, like cleanup crews for devitalized tissue.
So germs might show up because the environment is already unhealthy.
That's his hypothesis, a major departure from standard germ theory. He also warns against relying only on lab tests, saying you need to see the whole patient.
And he's wary of the quick fix mentality with pharmaceuticals.
Very. He sees it driven by patient demand and industry supply, but it ignores the deeper need for a healthy lifestyle, for understanding and obeying life's laws. It just papers over the cracks.
Real health for him is about self-discipline, spiritual and material.
Yes, it's an equilibrium you achieve through how you live, not something you just buy in a bottle.
Okay, so applying this to cancer, he sees it as a breakdown of vital rhythms, a pathological state of the whole person linked to a weakened spiritual core.
Precisely. A failure of the central directive power. The body's overall order and regulatory systems are compromised.
And the cancer cells are like rebels, escaping discipline, reproducing wildly.
That's his analogy, an anarchic colony within the organism, ignoring the central command.
He even floats this wild idea that they might originate from microbes that adapted over time, became cellular insiders.
Yeah, a sort of long-term corrupted symbiosis, where a foreign element integrates and then turns rogue.
And the link he makes between rising cancer rates and moral decline, that's pretty controversial. Disorder in the spiritual center weakens organic discipline.
It is controversial, but consistent with his view. He believes sustained negative emotional states can literally imprint on cells, projecting spiritual issues onto the physical plane.
Wow. So, like, a weakened center allows these degenerated cells to stage a revolution.
That's the picture he paints, a breakdown in the body's natural hierarchy.
And then he brings in reincarnation again, spirit choosing a body that fits its nature.
Yes, suggesting our physical form isn't random, but resonates with our spiritual essence and potentially our past karmic baggage.
So inherited predispositions might reflect past merits or demerits, the spirit drawn to a certain physical setup.
It's a complex link he proposes between past lives, spiritual affinity, and present physical vulnerabilities.
And he compares current humanity to a cancer cell, reproducing without discipline, a primitive evolutionary stage.
It's a harsh analogy, but yeah. He sees our societal chaos, our lack of collective discipline, mirroring that uncontrolled cellular growth.
Suggesting future societies might need more conscious control, like birth control, justified by life's overall needs.
He speculates that, yeah, a need for greater collective management and responsibility as we evolve.
He also gets more specific about a possible cancer origin, linking it to the spirochete, a type of bacteria, saying it could lie dormant, slowly altering cells.
He does delve into that specific hypothesis, a prolonged interaction between the microbe and human plasma disrupting cellular reproduction.
Leading to a sort of hybrid cell, a merger between microbe and body cell with crazy reproductive tendencies.
Yes, a neoplastic hybrid cell, where the genetic material forms a new, uncontrolled individuality, reproducing geometrically instead of arithmetically.
Escaping the body's control systems.
Exactly. And the real tragedy, he says, isn't just the tumor appearing, but the organism's prior failure to prevent it. That weakening of the central spiritual directive.
So just removing the tumor isn't enough.
Not if the underlying vital unity and central power remain weak. You have to address the root cause.
He sees modern society itself as weakened, polluted by psychic saprophytism, mirroring the cellular breakdown.
Yeah, kind of spiritual decay making us vulnerable. True health, he repeats, comes from order, balance, wisdom from a central power connected to life's principle. The psyche has immense power over the body for illness and healing.
And the soul, this vital, immaterial thing, is essential for matter to even organize into life.
Absolutely central to his view. Without that animating principle, there's no living organism.
Okay, last major area, spirituality and reincarnation more directly. Paradise and hell are states of mind we create.
That's his view. Order, harmony, peace versus chaos, distance, war. They are internal conditions, not necessarily external places.
And our current world, driven by struggle, contrasts with that paradisiacal ideal of cooperation.
Right. It highlights the gap between where we are evolutionarily and a more harmonious state.
He advises caution in judging others' fates, though. Hardship might be karmic, but don't jump to conclusions.
Exactly. Acknowledge cause and effect, but avoid simplistic condemnation.
And reincarnation itself is necessary, because one life isn't enough for deep learning and evolution.
He argues it provides the essential continuity. How else do we conserve experiences, build instincts, evolve over the vast time scales needed?
Our innate instincts, then, are products of our own past experiences, not just general human traits.
Yes, specific to each soul, developed through terrestrial life, revealed gradually as we evolve.
So we arrive with this bundle of impulses from the past, shaping our destiny, each life a link in a chain.
That's the idea. Each life builds on the last, contributing to the soul's long journey back to, as he puts it, God or the source. Life only makes sense within this evolutionary, reincarnationist frame.
What about free will versus fate? He says our limits now often come from past free choices.
Right. We might feel constrained now, but those constraints are often the consequences of earlier decisions, making us ultimately responsible for our current situation.
He uses Judas as the classic example. How can Judas be blamed if his betrayal was foretold? Necessary.
And Ubaldi's answer via reincarnation is key. Maybe Judas lacked free choice at that final moment, but that lack of choice was the result of countless earlier free choices, cultivating negative traits over lifetimes. The responsibility lies in the whole chain, not just the final link.
So reincarnation explains how we're still responsible, even when things feel fated now.
Exactly.
What about not remembering past lives? He dismisses that objection.
Calls it puerile, actually. He points out we don't remember huge chunks of our current life infancy, sleep. Lack of conscious recall doesn't negate existence. Plus, he posits a deeper subconscious consciousness that guides us.
So we should be humble about what our rational minds can grasp. Life operates on levels we don't consciously perceive.
Precisely. There's an infinite wisdom at play, and much of life's renewal happens beneath our awareness.
Which makes changing deep subconscious patterns formed over lifetimes really hard, beyond standard psychoanalysis.
He suggests psychoanalysis needs to go deeper, into the prenatal, guided by reincarnation, to truly reach those ancient roots.
He even talks about fetal formation being guided by spiritual attraction, the spirit choosing a suitable environment, genetics uniting spirit and body.
Yes, he sees the spirit playing an active role, making biology comprehensible only through this spiritual lens. The physical universe itself is a result of a spiritual fall, each life a chance for ascent.
This cycle continues until the soul re-spiritualizes.
That's the ultimate goal. He critiques science for only seeing effects, missing the spiritual causes. Even in things like fetal development or sex determination, he sees spiritual intention there.
Personality is more than the brain. It's this deeper ego, a divine spark. Reincarnation rebuilds it.
It's the mechanism for the ego's reconstruction and the progression of that divine spark within us. The soul deposits its gains at the end of each life for the next.
And fetal development mirrors the whole evolutionary journey. And post-death, the soul reviews past lives. The spiritual underpins the physical.
Yes, all interconnected. Each being's form matches its spiritual level. Evolution is fundamentally spiritual growth, with physical changes following. Darwin missed the spiritual core, the vital flow.
The purpose being to awaken consciousness, find God. The psychic seed creates the body.
That's his perspective. Reincarnation applies to all life. Humans get bodies suited to their psychic level.
Could we regress, though? Devolve?
Theoretically, yes, because of free will. But he believes life has automatic brakes self-interest. The fact that doing evil increases determinism that prevent total self-annihilation and nudge beings back towards evolution. The law respects freedom, but contains its misuse.
So self-destruction is only a theoretical possibility.
That seems to be his conclusion.
And the afterlife, those self-created mental states again, paradise and hell within. The near-universal belief points to a reality.
He thinks so. And the karmic wheel, reincarnation, is the way we complete that evolution, regain paradise. Our rebirth is guided by affinities, instinct.
Like attracts like. Though evolved souls might choose consciously.
Right. He even references the Tibetan Book of the Dead about avoiding rebirth. And while normal human union fits our current fallen state, higher laws can be followed. But for most, life's pains are the necessary path. It's a huge, detailed system.
Wow. Okay, let's try to surface here. After that deep dive into Ubaldi's current problems, it's definitely a unique perspective, seeing everything so interconnected.
It really is. Morality, society, economics, health, spirituality. He argues they're all facets of the same underlying reality, governed by universal laws and this grand evolutionary process.
We definitely pulled out some surprising ideas. His take on motivation, power dynamics, why economies wobble, that whole view on health and the body's intelligence versus just fighting disease.
And of course, the massive implications of reincarnation for understanding life, purpose, responsibility. It's a lot to chew on.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot, but it feels like we've only scratched the surface of his thought. It definitely invites more reflection on, well, reality itself.
For sure. It's dense stuff that stays with you.
So maybe a final thought for people to take away. If we accept Ubaldi's interconnected view just for a moment, what single shift, what one change in thinking or acting, maybe individually, maybe collectively, might have the biggest positive ripple effect on all these current problems he talks about?
That's a great question to ponder. Where would you even start?